and welcome. I'm excited to be your host for the next 50 minutes here and to introduce to you an exciting group of panelists. So I'll give you a brief introduction of everybody listed here on the screen and hand it over to them to tell you a bit more about what they're working on. So Antje is the Program and Innovation Manager at the ProVeg Incubator out of Berlin. Hannah is the Scientific Director at Pentec Consulting Group. Paul is the CEO of the Better Meat Co., author of Clean Meat and host of the Business for Good podcast. And Taly is the CEO of Innovopro and the chairperson of the food tech sector at the Israeli Export Institute. Again, I'm Logan Sullivan, co-founding CEO of the Counterfactual Venture Studio. We're a startup builder focused on identifying venture-backable opportunities to enable the alternative protein industry. We then recruit co-founding C-suites to carry forward the most promising proofs of concept into our 6-month incubator, powered by 250K pre-seed checks from the Counterfactual Fund. If interested in hearing more, investing in the fund, partnering with our venture studio, founding one of our companies, please feel free to reach out. You can find us at counterfactual.co. Enough about me. I'll hand it over to our panelists here to give themselves a brief introduction, tell us what they're working on, what they care about, and take it from there. Who would like to start? Hannah, could you get us started?
You're on mute.
Or anyone else, feel free to jump on in. Let's see.
Hannah's on mute.
Sorry, I was on mute.
There we go. Panelists, let's
Yes.
make sure to check our mute here. Awesome.
Yes, thank you very much for the introduction. Yes, I'm Hannah Lester and I'm the Scientific Director at Pentec Consulting. We're based in Barcelona, and essentially what we do is help our clients navigate all of the complex regulatory requirements needed to sell food products in the EU mostly, but also in other sort of major global markets. I personally am very, very passionate about helping companies that are developing all these amazing alternative protein products. And I'm really passionate about helping them get to market as smoothly as possible. I think this is such an exciting and innovative space, so I'm really, really happy to be involved and be a big part of it. From the regulatory side, product development, the regulatory part's often overlooked, and this can really cause serious issues and delays later down the line. So what we are here to do is to help companies identify whether or not their foods or food ingredients actually need authorization, and what to do if they do actually need to be authorized. So I would really say that the regulatory part sort of comes before you actually get your product to market. So far, I've worked with some really amazing companies doing amazing things. Unfortunately, I can't go into much detail because of client confidentiality, but we are working with several companies on cell-based meat, on fermentation products, and also plant-based protein isolates and other exciting things. And each of these sort of different product types have different regulatory considerations that really need to be thought through. So that's an introduction to me, what I'm passionate about and what we do.
Thank you, Hannah. Awesome. Feel free to jump in, Paul, Taly, Antje, whoever would like to go next.
Since you cited me first, Logan.
Here, so.
So since you cited me first, I'll be happy to go. Thanks, Logan. You actually gave a great introduction of me, so I don't feel the need to really supplement it much. I will say that I did write a book called Clean Meat. It's the book that explores the race between the inventors, scientists, entrepreneurs, and investors who are all racing to commercialize the world's first slaughter-free meats. And so when you heard Benjamina's great talk that she gave a few moments ago, that is what this book is about. However, my own company, the Better Meat Co., is an ingredients provider. We provide plant-based protein formulas directly to major meat users for them to blend into their actual ground meats so that they can use fewer animals and more plants. And so our biggest customer is a huge chicken company in the United States called Purdue Farms. This is a company that makes plant-based chicken nuggets. So these are half chicken, half plant-based chicken nuggets, tenders, and patties. They are sold in 7,000 grocery stores across the United States. We're very proud to say that the Food Network, the TV station, just named that frozen chicken nugget the best tasting frozen chicken nugget in America. So just think about that, the best tasting frozen chicken nugget in America is only 50% chicken. Just imagine how much we could lower our footprint on the planet if we could just take all chicken nuggets and other ground meats and make them 50% meat, 50% plant. You could have a dramatically lower footprint on the planet and on animals and on public health, all while not requiring people to make a necessarily different choice in the marketplace because they just keep buying the products from the same companies, eating the products that they know and they like. In fact, just this week, Purdue, one of Purdue's executives, Chris Purdue, was quoted in the news as saying that these half plant-based, half chicken nuggets routinely outperform on taste their conventional chicken nuggets in taste tests. So finally, I'll just mention, I'm not here alone today. I've brought somebody to help me out in the debate. This is my pit bull, Eddie, and he's going to be helping me when we get started here. But he's very tired because
I wasn't aware of it like it. I didn't give him a proper introduction, Paul. So sorry.
You can see that Eddie is tired because it's early on the West Coast. He's not accustomed to this, but he's with me. Don't worry.
Awesome. Thanks, Paul. Taly or Antje, feel free to take it away.
Okay, so I'm Talin Akristan, CEO of Innovopro. Innovopro has a proprietary technology for the extraction of chickpea protein concentrate. Our process is unique by being actually a green process. We do not use any solvents for the extraction process, any organic solvents, and we use much less energy and water than similar processes. And the final product, our CP Pro 70, that is produced in this mechanism is unique because it has a combination of properties which is hard to find today in other plant-based proteins. So other plant-based proteins are available now for more than 60 years. The soy protein is still the king of the arena, and pea protein is following it. And we consider our chickpea protein as an innovative because its combination of properties is all about what interests R&D people, but also the consumer. It is highly functional, meaning it combines water and oil great together, very soluble, foams well, does great gelling. It's very nutritious with 70% protein, low in carbs, low in sodium. And the most important thing in food is taste. So it has a very neutral taste. So you can use it in a lot of applications, varying from dairy alternatives to ice creams and to meat analogs and all what's in between, like sports, nutrition, and so on. And I think what interests the consumer is its ability of this magical ingredient to formulate clean label applications, and I will get to that later.
Awesome, thank you, Taly. One more. Antje, go for it.
Yes, thank you. Hi, everybody. Great to be here. Yeah, my name is Antje Räuscher. I'm the Program and Innovation Manager at the ProVeg Incubator. We are based out of Berlin and part of ProVeg International, which I hope many of you know already about. It's a food awareness organization. We are active in 8 different countries, and all our work starts with the premise, basically, that the way that we are feeding the population right now is somewhat flawed, and that the solution and the way forward is alt protein, plant-based, cell-based, all neighboring technologies. Yeah, and at the incubator, I work with the startups, I do scouting, we are forming part of their journey and supporting them on, yeah, between prototyping up until the point where they go to the market. We invest into the startups, offer our network, and yeah, basically be a companion along the way. Yeah, I'm proud to say that we have worked with 40 startups so far, and I see some of our alumni even in this chat, which I'm really happy about. So hi to Misha and Ichtut. Yeah, that's about me. I'm really passionate about the space. I'm inspired by the way that food is so transformative and touches on many aspects of of our lives. And yeah, super excited to be part of this panel and discussing with all of you.
Awesome. Thank you, Antje. There certainly are a lot of familiar faces in the audience right now. It's a small world out there, and I suppose this is our effort to expand that a little bit and try to grow it. So with that in mind, a bit of an overview of what you can expect from the questions to come. We'll start zoomed in a bit on everyone's, our panelists here, personal focuses within alternative protein, as we've touched on it a bit here. We'll go into more detail. Then we'll zoom out a bit to the wider industry, looking at sort of underappreciated opportunities, yet to be avoided threats that alternative protein faces on its way from 1% market share towards 10, and then sort of that different brand of challenges and opportunities we might face as we look from 10% towards 100. Staying true to the name of the event's name today, we'll explore the intersection as well of taste, people, and planet. Already done a little bit by the introductions here so far. So if we can jump right in with Taly and Paul here, I got a question for you both. So Taly, you're committed to all applications of your chickpea protein ingredients being clean label, GMO-free, gluten-free, dairy-free, and delicious. Particularly love the last one there. And Paul, as you mentioned, you're focused on easing plant-based protein ingredients into existing meat products. So Taly, I'd like to hear your case for clean label. And following that, Paul, I'd like to hear your case for going the hybrid route there. And if anything spins out of that or our other panelists want to chime in, please go for it. Take it away, Taly.
So everything starts with the consumer. And I don't know if you know the numbers, but 1 out of 3 people are reading food labels, either in the supermarkets while they're doing their shopping or while they're buying their groceries online. And this is like a very new phenomena. Only recently, food companies realized that people are actually turning back to the shelves products that they didn't like the ingredient list they saw. Sometimes they see a list of 20 to 30 ingredients. Most of them they cannot recognize even as food. And most of the consumers are not by education food technologists, so when they see E numbers or any ingredients that they cannot pronounce their names, they are a bit suspicious about this product, so they turn it back. And the clean label revolution started when companies realized that if they want to capture this new consumer, they need to reformulate. So our chickpea protein basically is an enabler. Innovopro is an ingredient company, so we would like to work with food companies who would like to change their recipes, meaning they would like to formulate clean label products. And I can tell you that all of the big global CPGs are already there. They find it very difficult. Hannah mentioned regulation and other issues. They find it very difficult to reformulate, but they do a lot of efforts to launch to their markets new products that have a short list of ingredients, and all of the ingredients can be recognized by the consumer as natural and healthy. And since our chickpea ingredient is highly functional and very strong emulsifier, it combines, it can relate to other ingredients in the formula and create a very stable, neutral in taste structure that consumer either find very similar to milk product or very similar to meat analog, depends on the category, with 6 to 8 ingredients only. All of them can be recognized as food by the consumer. So you can take out of the equation carrageenan, modified starch, a lot of E numbers, and have like an ice cream with instead of 23 ingredients based on our chickpea protein, you can have an ice cream with maximum 9 ingredients.
Amazing. Thank you for that. I do remember, one of the first times actually seeing a product or noticing a label that only had 4 or 5 ingredients, and how absolutely refreshing that was to understand what I'm actually eating.
It's still rare to see this kind of labels.
Sure. Paul, tell us about your case for the hybrid routes and why Better Meat Co. is heading in that direction.
Thanks, Logan, and my hat's off to Taly for the work that you're doing. So thank you for that. So let me tell you a quick story. Just you had already indicated, Logan, that right now plant-based meat is generally about less than 1% of all meat sales on the planet. That's true in the United States. That's true in Europe. The reality is that unlike plant-based milk, plant-based meat has just not yet taken over much market share. And when you think about it on a per pound basis, not on a dollar volume, because these plant-based meats are typically sold for multiples over the cost of commodity meat. They're not sold at 30 or 40% more. They're generally sold at like 300 or 400% more of the cost of commodity meat. And so if you look at it on a per pound basis, which is what most people really ought to care about, because that's looking at how many animals are being raised. If you look at a per pound basis, estimates are generally that plant-based meat represents about 0.2% of the total meat market. So 99.8% of meat is still coming from animals in the United States. Higher percentage across the world, but in the US about 99.8. So it's barely, even perceptible. We in this community may think of it as very big because we see all these great things happening, a lot of progress, things showing up on fast food menus, and all of that is fantastic. But we should remember that plant-based meat as of today is still a rounding error in the grand ledger of the meat industry. And if you look at the most aggressive projections, like from Barclays, they say that within 10 years, by 2030, they think that 10% of the meat market will be alternative meats. So that would be huge to go from 0.2% to 10% within 10 years. But it still means that 90% of the meat is coming from factory farmed animals within 10 years. And that's, of course, a very serious ethical problem from an animal welfare perspective. And from a climate perspective, it's really a non-starter. Look, Logan and I right now are on the West Coast. We're walking outside is a dangerous thing to do because of how bad the air is. We're facing all these climate crises, from the wildfires to the hurricanes and more. And imagine how much worse it'll be in 10 years if we don't quickly get our act together. So now let me tell you a quick story. Imagine that you were the director of dining at a corporate cafeteria, and you're serving pork sausages, and people come in, they buy the pork sausages. And imagine that you are persuaded, because you were at this EIT conference, that you want to offer a totally vegan sausage as well. Awesome, good for you. So you put them out, and by some miracle, you market them at the same price. Of course, that doesn't happen in the real world, but imagine that you are able to market them in the real world and at the same price. Now, lunchtime comes in, people file in, and they have their choice between the pork sausage and the vegan sausage. What percentage of people do you think are going to consciously decide to permanently switch from the pork to the vegan? Now, you probably, all right, Logan says 2%. He's saying he thinks 2%. Okay, so let's say it's 2%. Now imagine that if, in addition to offering that vegan sausage, you also blended your current sausage at, let's say, 50%, like what we were talking about earlier, 50% plant-based, 50% sausage. So the default item becomes half plant-based. Now, instead of reducing the demand by 2%, you're actually reducing it by 50%, and you're not requiring people to buy something different. They're buying the default item. And we see this time and time again. As an example, in the United States, we're all so excited about the Impossible Whopper at Burger King. I'm excited about it. I've bought it many times. I think it's awesome. It's one of the greatest events of our movement's history, but it hasn't reduced beef demand at Burger King. The goal of it, of course, is to actually displace demand for meat. Whereas at Burger King, beef sales have not gone down since the introduction of the Impossible Whopper. And that's not to knock it. I mean, it's awesome. It's phenomenal. It's one of the greatest things, again, to have happened in the history of plant-based meat. But it is to say that what if, in addition to doing that, they had also blended the regular Whopper, let's say 20%, just 80% beef, 20%, you would have had a 1/5 reduction in meat consumption at Burger King without requiring people to switch. That is the promise of blending. And from a business perspective, it just makes a lot more sense. Even if you don't care about reducing meat consumption, the market is so wide because you're dealing not with a niche market, you're dealing with the commodity market. Now, the problem is that you have to try to compete on cost. Difficult to do, but there is a different science when you're talking about the science of blending. There's a science of animal meat, there's a science of plant-based meat, and then there is a science of marrying animal and plant proteins together so that they form a seamless blend so that the consumer cannot tell the difference visually or when they taste it. And that is what we are doing at the Better Meat Co, is pioneering that science of blending animal and plant proteins together so that we can make advancements on sustainability in a way where everybody wins.
Amazing. Thank you for that, Paul. Any objections here? Any controversies or oppositions? I love where you're coming and everything that you're up to, Paul. Really, really appreciate it. Open up to the panel if anyone wants to throw anything else in there, or we can move on to more questions. Cool.
I have a question, Paul, for you, because I feel like what you're drawing, it's really, yeah, it sounds really fascinating, and it definitely makes sense. I think your approach is amazing, but it sounds more like a top-down approach in terms of customer acceptance. And I wonder if I'm a flexitarian and I'm somewhat intrigued by the plant-based changes that are happening, why should I take a blended hybrid product?
Thanks, Sancho. Well, first of all, I am a fan of what ProVeg is doing, so thank you. It's a mutual admiration here. But second, first of all, if you're a flexitarian and you're thinking, I just want plant-based, that's awesome. More power to you. I'm thrilled for you to go choose that. I'm not trying to persuade anybody to switch from plant-based meat to hybrid meat, of course. At the same time, I do think that there's a huge population of people out there who are just going to buy the default item. In some ways, it is comparable to with gasoline in the United States, where people, sorry about this. This is what I'm dealing with here. Yeah, that's the noise you hear in the background. Is him
objecting.
Yeah. He's objecting. He wants the real deal. No. So anyway, in the United States, you know, people, when they put gas in their car, they don't think about it, but generally about 10% of it is ethanol. So the goal of it is, of course, there's lots of goals. So one goal is reduce fossil fuel use, but people don't think about it. They just have a situation where they're putting gas in their car, and that's our goal at Better Meat Co. Yeah, sure, if people want to market it as a blended item, that's fantastic, but they don't have to. They can just do it in a stealth health approach. In the same way, for example, that when major canned soup manufacturers began reducing sodium, they didn't tout it as reduced sodium because they were afraid that people would think less sodium means less flavor. They just gradually reduced the amount of sodium and trained people's palates to do that. And I think similarly with blending that we can achieve something similar. So yes, some folks will actually market it to people who want to eat less meat, but other people will just do it as a stealth health approach. And that's a great way too, because it means that we get the sustainability and animal welfare advancements that we're seeking without having to, you know, do a lot of marketing in the process. Is that helpful?
Yes.
Helpful for me? Awesome. Thank you, Paul. Fantastic. So, okay, let's move on here. Hannah, I got one for you if you're ready. So both Paul and Taly promoted the health benefits of their plant-based ingredients. And I know you're, we talked about this a little bit. You're personally interested in seeing alternative proteins provide more than just marginal improvements on certain health categories, I suppose. Rather, you'd like to see alternatives first provide an equal total nutritional profile to the product that they're replacing, and then improve upon as many categories of that total nutritional profile as possible. If that's the accurate representation of your position there, I'd love to hear more, or your argument for why companies out there ought to take this approach. New entrants into the market ought to have this in mind, why this is better for the world, better for the industry, and so on.
Okay, yeah, so building on what Taly said more than anything, you know, I think an iterative approach is misleading to the consumer. I think if we're asking consumers to buy into a plant-based or even flexitarian diet, then we should be providing them with products that are nutritionally equivalent to the real thing, if not better. And really, these products shouldn't be filled with additives just to mimic the texture and taste. Otherwise, I really think that we risk replacing poor nutrition with a different type of poor nutrition. And as Paul said, you know, the customer is going to be paying more for this privilege. So I really think it's very misleading. So I'm not against additives per se. And I think that some of the sort of plant-based meat, egg, and analogues are quite misleading because they're promoting that they're amazing for the animal welfare, for sustainability, and for health in general. But then when you look at the label, they're full of all sorts of additives. And this, you know, as I said, I'm not against additives, but I think the message that's being portrayed isn't exactly honest, in my personal opinion. So I really think that the companies need to ensure that the products are both sustainable and nutritious. You know, that's where the bar should be set. And it can be done.
Do you trust market leaders now who gain some traction in the space, find some mass market appeal to then iterate and become kind of more true to their promise of a healthier product, or is that just not in the cards?
Well, obviously it's going from, it's a huge step. So I think if we're being realistic, then there will be these, you know, this stepwise approach, but it can be done. So Chris Langwellner from Namzi and What If Foods, so they have produced an instant noodle that looks, behaves and tastes like a standard instant noodle, but it's made from Bambara groundnut, which is a sustainable legume crop, and the final product itself is nutritionally better and than the standard instant noodle. So, you know, I think there are companies that are setting the bar very high, and they are, you know, trying to achieve sustainable, healthy and nutritious, tasty, all of these things, you know, products that are going to be much better than what we already have. So I think the challenge for food companies is to really step it up and aim high, and I do have faith that it can be done.
I like that.
I am an optimist.
Thank you for that. I agree with a lot of what you're saying here. I'd like to open it to any of the panelists if there's any objections here. It's a topic we'll come back to a little bit down the line, I suppose, if we have time to. But if anyone has any urgent opposing views, please share.
I wouldn't say it's opposing, but I might say it's supplementary, which is that
even better.
I think so. Two quick things. One, on the blended meats, they are healthier than the conventional. They have less cholesterol, less saturated fat, fewer calories, and they're not necessarily more expensive. So the consumer in the end is actually getting a better product altogether. But while I am not in the market of, you know, producing fully plant-based meats, I will defend companies like Beyond Meat and simply say, you know, these are not the type of thing where if you walk into Burger King, I doubt that many people are thinking that they're getting health food. But what they are going to get if they order, let's say, a Beyond Burger from Carl's Jr. is a burger that is healthier than a conventional beef burger. It has zero cholesterol. It has less saturated fat. I mean, it is better. It's not to say it's health food. I agree. It's not the type of thing that, you know, I think is going to be touted as good as a salad. But I do think that we should be realistic about what the average fast food consumer is expecting when they go to Burger King or McDonald's to get a fast food burger.
Can we get burgers to be as healthy as salads soon? Who out there can work on that? I'd really appreciate that.
Yeah,
I
mean, obviously there's, no, I mean, I completely agree with what Paul's saying. You know, a burger from Burger King, you know, a Big Mac is not healthy to start with. So, you know, you can only improve it by adding any amount of sort of plant-based ingredients to it. So I completely agree. But I'm thinking more of products like egg analogues and milk analogues, which have a very high nutritional profile or nutrient profile. And the analogues are not as nutritionally beneficial as the real thing. So I would, you know, that's more of where I'm sort of heading.
Awesome. Thank you, Hannah. I have a feeling we could go down a number of tangents there.
Yes.
Have a number of branches I could take us off on, but have a few other questions here. So thank you for that. And we'll come back to that later on and touch on that a bit more. Antje, I have one for you. So with all of this in mind, everything we've discussed so far, and as the innovation and program manager of one of Europe's major incubators. If you had a dream scenario for your next cohort of companies, what collection of companies would you like to see that gives you strong confidence we're heading towards sort of a panacea of the delicious mimic product that actually mimics the experience of what it's replacing and is also much more healthy, also better for the environment, and also preferably better for as many stakeholders affected by a transition in the food system as it can? What do these collections of companies look like in this sort of dream cohort to give you that kind of confidence?
Gosh, that's such a tough question.
Can't take that in any direction you like. If that's one dream company or a collection of 8, go for it.
Okay, so my dream shopping list of people in our cohort, I think, well, I mean, from an organizational perspective, for which we are looking a lot about, it's really a lot about impact and effectiveness. But when you look at that, I would like to see more seafood companies and egg companies, because if you look at the numbers of animals that are slaughtered in those sectors, it's tremendous, and there's still so much market growth potential for that. Yeah, meat is at barely 1%, but seafood is like, I think 1/10 or even less of that. So there's so much room to grow. And yeah, so in terms of product categories, more seafood, more egg alternatives, more industrial applications, diversification of ingredients. I love soy as an ingredient because I think it has a good nutritional profile, and it's extremely sustainable as itself, not in the way it is put in the agricultural sector right now. But yeah, it's not enough, and it's a ways to realize that in traditional animal agriculture, we have put so much research and engineered the last bit of efficiency out of that, but all of this is unexplored in the plant-based space, pretty much. So there's so much potential in that, in diversification of processing technologies, of raw ingredients, to really achieve those things that Taly and Hannah, you were mentioning, to get a better nutritional profile and make it more sustainable. Yeah, I would also like to see more startups from emerging countries. We are always looking for startups. In India, there's so many talents coming from there. It's quite impressive, actually. But also the Asian region, APEC region, Southeast Asia, apart from Singapore, which is like, yeah, the rest is a blank state almost. And yeah, I could ramble on for longer now, but I think in terms of a dream cohort, that would be it. But
can I ask what your first, what would be your 5 countries you'd like to see companies from? India being one, what others?
Yeah, India, China, but there's some there, but it's still a nascent place for obvious reasons. I would like to see more in Southeast Asia, a part of Singapore, like Thailand or Vietnam, actually, and Africa, which is a continent, I know, but we can start with South Africa maybe, because there's some stuff happening there. But we got also applications from Nigeria, Kenya, and I think it's incredibly, there's so much potential there, because people are starting to consume dairy. It's an aspirational thing, and it's so important that we can get in there in the beginning before everyone starts to consume cow's dairy.
There's some room for improvement in some of those countries. I lived in a couple of them.
So much room for improvement.
I did live and work in Nigeria for a year in the capital city, and it took me until my 9th month to find one single meal that I was certain was vegan served at a restaurant. Wow. So there's some room for improvement. And when I'd ask for vegan, it would often mean fish or at least dairy and so on. Awesome. Yeah. That sounds like a great collection of companies. Anyone out there considering any of those companies should definitely look to apply to ProVeg. I like the sound of it. Cool. All right, so let's transition into some group questions here. I'm going to highlight a scenario for us all and see if we can occupy a position here for a second. So we often talk about opportunities for companies to win market share, for investors to cash out, and the most we have to say about how to move the industry forward is building more companies, bringing more investment into the space. And I believe that's certainly part of the equation, but I think the movement towards mass market adoption of alternatives to animal-derived products seems to reach a point of diminishing returns when we hit the 500th plant-based milk, the 1000th veggie burger CPG. So now with this all in mind, imagine for a moment that the collective alternative protein industry and all of its enablers, all of the investors, the incubators, academics, advocates, nonprofits, and so on, is all under one roof as one single entity. And you're brought in as the most trusted strategic consultant to the leadership team of this single entity. How do we feel about that scenario? Let's hold this perspective for a couple questions here. So I'd like to ask each of you in 30 seconds, again, as the most trusted strategic advisor or strategic consultant to the leadership of this industry, what is your strategic recommendation for reaching 10% market share as quickly as possible? Antje, go for it.
Okay, 30 seconds. Okay, I'm wasting already some seconds here. I think I'm going to start. I'm going to start from a customer perspective, and that would be what we call the magic triangle of taste, price, and availability. And I think in terms of taste, we've come a long way. Definitely, we all probably remember the times of dry soy sausages. So that's happening. Price, certainly we need to really focus on our attention on how to decrease unit economics in terms of scale as we have bigger volumes, as we innovate in processing technologies and open up new raw ingredient sources. And the last one, I think availability is really crucial here because that's where the gatekeepers are for the market. The retailers in this world, the distributors, the wholesalers, the food service sector. And it's super exciting to see that a lot of change is happening and that major players are jumping on this, but there needs to be more of that. And I can speak from my experience that I know, at least in Germany, that retailers are tough not to crack, and it pays off to stay behind their heels and really get them into the game.
Well, they're all within the entity you're advising now, so you can tell them whatever you want in this scenario. Taly, can you take it next?
Yes, I would like to be a bit, I want to apply to the rules that you just asked us.
Take it wherever you like, that's great.
I think that if I avoid the issue of time, the most important thing about accelerating the plant-based arena is about education, educating the young, the children. And I know that a lot of revolutions began with kids in kindergarten and kids in school being taught about what is the right way to eat. And they basically taught their parents when they got back home that what they are giving them is probably not the best way how they would like to eat, and it's not the best for them. So I think that education can play a huge role in the plant-based arena. This is, I think, one institute that we forgot to put under your roof of a lot of entities, but this is, I think, the most important one. It will take time, but it will get there for sure.
Amazing. You think that'll get us quickest to 10%, or
not quickest?
Might that help us get to 100?
Not the quickest, but the surest, maybe.
I like it. I'm right there with you. Paul, go for it.
Well, first, you want to get there quickest? Blend. It is the fastest way. I've already hit on that though, so I'll just echo one part of what Antje said. And that is that, yes, look, on taste, these products have gotten so much better. They are really getting in some areas, I think, getting close to taste parity. However, on price, we just aren't there. I mean, that's just all there is to it. And, you know, if you look at, let's say, Beyond Burgers, my wife and I purchased some from our local Safeway, which is like a mainstream grocery chain here last weekend. And they were $6.99 for 2 quarter-pound patties. So that's $14 a pound at retail. It's, you know, that's more than 300% over the cost of what the conventional beef patties adjacent to them are going for. And so it can taste as great as it does, but if it's selling for multiples over the cost of the commodity conventional product, it's going to be a niche product. That's just the way it is. And so, Beyond has set a goal of by the year 2025 being cost competitive with beef, which is the most expensive of the conventional meats, of the like regularly eaten conventional meats. Chicken still way far off. And so you have companies like Rebellious Foods in Seattle, Washington, who their entire goal is cost competitiveness with actual chicken. So I do think that there are companies that are making price a big part of what they're doing, but the reality is that it's just not there yet. And we have to accept that these alternatives are more expensive. So either you blend in an economic way, you bring the price down, or you can do, you can try to get people to switch to things that aren't as expensive, like a nice bean and rice burrito. Nothing, you don't need plant-based meat. You can eat plant-based foods without eating plant-based meat. So, I think there's actually quite a long way, quite a lot of opportunity in popularizing more conventional plant-based foods. Like with tofu, for a long time, it was considered like a 4-letter word. And now you have companies that are really making tofu look, taste, and be marketed much more attractively, like Hodo Soy here in California. And they are making tofu that people love. And that is really like, it's the first branded tofu with different flavors and textures and so on. And so I actually think there's quite a lot that could be done, not necessarily just in getting plant-based meat to have higher market share, but if your goal is reducing the number of animals raised for food, there's a lot that can be done for a lot less money, with much less like biotechnology and so on than, just, somebody doing a company to make black beans sexy, for example. So I think both of them. And the final thing I would say is that they should have picked a better advisor, and hopefully somebody has more training than I do to advise them on these matters.
Cool. Hannah, go for it.
Well, as the specialist in regulatory affairs, I'm usually the least welcome at the party because I'm usually the bearer of bad news, because we often see that the commercial objectives are not always aligned with the regulatory reality, unfortunately. So I would say my sort of top strategic advice would be to think about the regulatory side from the very beginning of product development. To make sure that the commercial objectives are actually feasible and there are no nasty surprises sort of down the line. I mean, I have a very good example. I'm sure all of you have heard about or tried Just Egg, and they have had a huge success story over in the US, but in the EU they hit a roadblock because some of the ingredients were considered as novel. So they needed to be authorized before they could sell their Just Egg product in the EU. And that authorization process is ongoing now. And this has really delayed them by at least 3 years for them to get to market. So they're nowhere near sort of 0% at the moment, let alone 10%. So, I mean, I really think the regulatory part is a very important consideration, because they've gone full steam ahead in the US, but then hit a wall when it came to the EU.
Awesome. Thank you for that. I resonate with being the downer at the party on the topic.
Yeah.
The path advocate, I understand.
The unwelcome guest.
Yeah. So I did have 2 other questions with this scenario, but I think we kind of blended our answers here a bit. I was going to ask about if you were advising the sustainability and nutrition teams and how they best work with the product teams. How do we move forward? And what do you say to the PR marketing campaign policy teams? What advice do you give? But I think we kind of gave a blended answer to all of those. So maybe I can relinquish you of your consulting duties for the moment, and we'll move on to one other scenario. Let's fast forward to the day that alternative proteins captures 10% of the global animal-derived food market. As we look forward from that day in the future towards 50% and beyond towards 100, at this point in time, what is the industry's biggest regrets from the journey from 1% to 10% as we look forward towards capturing 100% of the market? Or in other words, what later stage risks, burdens faced by the industry are we on the path right now to creating due to early stage lack of foresight? Anyone can take that one if you'd like, or we can go in the same order if you'd like. Taly, would you like to start us out? Or anyone else? I think
I'll start it, unless Taly's on mute. I'm happy to, but Taly, were you on mute? I don't want to go first if you're going to go.
Oh, I just wanted to say, I speak very briefly. I think that we all should be very concerned about too much marketing and not enough, let's say, visibility or transparency when we're talking to consumers, because maybe we will lose their trust along the way. So I think all of the plant-based arena should be very transparent and clear about its goals, its ingredients, its mission, and always share 100% of the information with consumers.
Awesome.
Well, I certainly echo what you're saying, Taly, and I think that you'll like my response, especially since it's basically an advertisement for your company. But I'll say one concern that I would have, let's say that we do face that time, it's 10%, is that there might be an over-reliance on one or two types of products. So if you look at plant-based meat right now, it's nearly all of it is based on either soy, wheat, or pea. And there's good reasons for that. They're cheap, they're abundant, they have been studied at great length. We know that they're safe, but we do need a greater diversity of protein sources here. And so, right now in the animal meat sense, you have lots of different inputs. You can have chicken, pork, fish, beef, and so on. Whereas in the plant-based meat, you might end up having everything coming from, pea protein or just soy protein. Whereas I do think that if companies like Innovo can get like their chickpea protein to actually bring the cost down so that you can compete on price. And if you can have like other companies, like if you look at what corn, QUORN, is doing with mycoproteins, if they could bring their prices down for those too, you could have a greater diversity, a much broader portfolio of animal-free proteins to choose from, which I think will be good for a whole variety of reasons that I won't belabor us here with, but I think it would be beneficial to ensure that our industry focuses not just on one or two species to make our products, but proteins from fungi, proteins from yeast, proteins from chickpeas, proteins from lentils, and so on.
Yeah, and I would echo exactly what Paul has said. I mean, there are 300,000 edible crop species out there, and we're heavily reliant on 3 or 4. Obviously, there's some amazing product development with the protein isolates of chickpeas and mung beans and another plant species, but there are so many more out there. So I agree, we shouldn't be reliant and sort of go down the rabbit hole and just chase these few protein ingredients. We should be looking wider, casting the net wider. And also that sort of, it links in with what Antje was saying about the developing countries. I mean, some of these amazing crops are in African countries, and it could really bring in income and revenue to these developing countries. So yeah, I mean, there's so much that can be done.
Antje, you want to wrap us up there?
I echo that the 4th time. I absolutely agree with all of you in terms of the diversification, but I will add like maybe a cultural dimension to it. I think food has evolved over decades with humans, and it's just really an integral part of identity and emotional attachments. And I think the danger that comes with centralized food supply by a few and centralizing the types of ingredients that are there is that a lot of that cultural culinary heritage is getting lost. And yeah, I think that's something that plant-based or the new generation of the food system has really taken into account, that to leverage the knowledge that is out there, like to look into traditional crops or ways of producing and making food that are already there, and just elevating that into a modern form.
Awesome. Thank you for that. I think we're pushing up towards our time here pretty quickly. I'd love to end us on an action-oriented note if we can. Hate to get a group of people together and not have some takeaways, some assignments here. So Hannah, we have in the audience, we have corporate representatives, investors, current entrepreneurs, and talent, future founders, and so on. Hannah, could you if you could give a quick assignment in a sentence or two for the scientists out there that you'd like them to take forward after listening to everything we discussed today?
Yeah, so my assignment would be to really focus on producing nutritious products that are as good as, or ideally better than what we already have, so better than meat, milk and eggs, without compromising on taste and texture. So it's a big ask, but also sort of not just the science part, but the regulatory part is to, you know, to really think about that at the beginning of product development to save you any headaches later down the line.
Amazing. Paul, can I ask you to give an assignment to those corporate partners out there? If you had one thing to ask them to take action on, what would it be?
The planet isn't getting any bigger. Humanity's footprint on the planet is getting bigger. And one of the principal ways we leave that footprint is through our food print, primarily in the amount of meat that we eat, because it just takes up so much land, so much water, so many other resources, greenhouse gas emissions and more. And so if you are working at a large company that uses a lot of meat, I would encourage you to think about what you can do to help lighten that footprint. And whether that is blending your current products to make them have a lighter footprint, and and offering more of the plant-based products as well. I think it's a great opportunity to have corporate leadership in this space and can bring us to a better food future. If you're interested in getting in touch with us at the Better Meat Co., we'd love to partner with you. We want to be helpful. Our entire goal is to be helpful for large meat using companies. So feel free to get in touch with us. You can just go to bettermeat.co. Again, that's bettermeat.co, and get in touch. We'd love to hear from you.
Thanks, Paul. Taly, what assignment would you like to give to current entrepreneurs out there?
Well, I think that thinking about a great idea is only the start. And in real life, it's all about execution. So I think my advice for an entrepreneur is first to be able not to sleep that much, meaning not rely on too many hours of sleeping at night. And also about identifying his strengths, his weaknesses, and building a team. A great team that will be very professional and passionate and will lead the way.
Amazing. Antje, can you wrap us up with an assignment you'd like to give to future founders out there?
Yeah, this goes out to all the scientists again, the PhD students, the biochemists, the food technologists, all these people who are really the talent in this industry and that need to drive it forward, and who I know might be getting stuck in academia or at the university. It's really important that guys, yeah, get out there, maybe think about what drives you. Maybe it's food that would be the best for this case. Become a founder, like start a startup, and yeah, contribute to this transformation.
Amazing. Thank you so much, everybody. I think we've bumped up into our end of our time here. I was sent a few questions. I'm so sorry we didn't get to a Q&A here, but I'm assuming that I can make the offer that any of the panelists here would be interested in having other conversations, I'm sure, sometime. So we all know where to reach out. Be in touch. You can find me at counterfactual.co. Absolute pleasure to have a conversation. Not sure who I hand it over to here, but maybe Ryan, take it away.
Yeah,
Thank you,
thanks
everybody.
guys. Thanks everybody. Awesome to hear those insights. And yeah, on the questions, there are quite a few questions. What the idea is, we're going to have a little networking session now. So if the speakers can stick around, we're going to put you in rooms and people will come and say hello to you and ask you those questions. We can do it that way. So thank you all. Natalie, I think I'm handing over to.
So we're going to be moving on to the networking now. And I don't know if you've noticed in the last half an hour, you've all become co-hosts. So you have the power, once the breakout rooms start, to treat this as if it was a normal networking event and choose who you want to talk to and which room you want to jump into. So we have a few different kinds of breakout rooms. We have theme-based, so if you want to talk to any of the startups you heard speak earlier, that will be an option. Likewise, there's a room on the mixed debate panel, another one for the landscape talk earlier, where you can just continue those discussions even if the speakers are there or aren't there. And then we'll also be having some open discussion rooms for anything you'd like to chat about. and a few private rooms as well. So if a few of you would like to go into a more intimate discussion, feel free to go ahead, and the Zoom etiquette will be that, you know, you will be uninterrupted in that room. So yeah, I'll be sending you all into the start room now. And if you have any questions, moving around, we'll be there too, and we can help you, either Laurie, Ryan, or myself. So there's your invitation to the start room.
Just as you go, just let you know, we will keep Zoom open. So officially we finish at 5:30 in next 15 minutes, but we will, if you want to continue a conversation, this Zoom will be open for quite a while longer. So you can stay for as long as you want and keep talking. We encourage that. And you'll also know, and we'll be sharing with you again, the link to Magic Networks, where even beyond today, you can continue the conversation.
Yeah.
Okay. See you in one of the rooms. Cheers, everyone. Have a good networking.